So I'm Donald Link. I'm the chef of Herbsaint, Cochon, Peche, and Butcher here in New Orleans. Well, I grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, in a small town, actually, Sulphur, next door. We lived in Sulphur a little bit, Lake Charles. And I grew up eating my grandparents' cooking. There wasn't really chefs in restaurants where I grew up. Not really so much in that time either, you know, that time period of the chefs weren't a thing. So I grew up mostly with home cooking. My grandfather was, you know, hunted and fished. He was from Alabama, so I got a really good classic Southern food upbringing from his side, from my mom's side of the family, and my dad's side of the family were German immigrants to Cajun country. So a lot of, you know, smothered pork, gumbos, and dirty rice. You know, a lot of that, you know, rice and sausage-centric meat cookery from the, you know, the prairie regions of Acadiana. It's definitely, you know, influenced my food pretty heavily. Obviously, not just the dishes, but the style of flavor profiles, and you know, using farm products was always, you know, it was just what you did. You know, you didn't go to the store and get produce. You know, my granddad grew it, and you know, there's a lot of fish that we would catch. I mean, you never bought seafood at a grocery store. It was always either we went fishing or shrimping, or one of my uncles did. I mean, I have 10 uncles, so there's a lot of them. Herbsaint was, you know, I opened Herbsaint in 2000, and when I wanted, my original idea for Herbsaint was to be this neighborhood, you know, French influenced bistro, using the Louisiana techniques I grew up with. So the streetcars are going to be, every time we talk out here, we pause when the streetcars come by, like mid-sentence, like now.
But you got that great visual reflected in the
So, you know what I spent, you know, 6 years off and on in San Francisco cooking, and you know, really learned a lot from. So I picked up a lot of that sensibilities of, you know, the using local ingredients. Obviously in California, it's everywhere. I mean, that was never out of vogue. I don't know how it got out of vogue anywhere, to be honest with you. I don't understand farm to table. It just, what else is there? I mean, I guess box to table, end to table. So I just came here and came back and decided I wanted to connect with my roots. And, you know, in California, it was kind of, I was trying to do things that weren't Southern Cajun in any way, because I really wanted to learn proper French techniques, learn about other cultures and Chinese food, and learn a lot of different things. And, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, I came to a realization when I opened Herbsaint that I am from Louisiana, and that I can incorporate the food I grew up with those techniques and with the same sensibilities that I learned in the fine dining restaurants, and you put it into play at a, you know, here in New Orleans. So, you know, at that time, I think it was very different. I mean, it was fine dining in New Orleans at that point was fine dining. I mean, it was like high end. And, you know, the whole idea of Herbsaint when we opened was to be a little bit more casual, to have a more casual setting. You know, we have tablecloths, but it was right at the tail end of that kind of idea where you don't have to eat a certain way. It doesn't have to be a formal, drawn-out dinner. That there's, you know, the additions of the small plates, and the idea that you could get a couple small plates and a salad, as opposed to, you know, salad, app, entree, dessert. You know, this rigid style of dining. And it was a little more mixed, you know, more, you know, a lot of Italian, but still very similar. There's a lot of similarities to like country Cajun cooking, Southern cooking, and the rural cookings of Italy and France. A lot of the same things, and a lot of the same ideas of my house prepared, house cooked, because, you know, honestly, the whole style of cooking in the South and Cajun country is derived from those European counterparts with the, you know, the African influence from the Caribbean mixed in. But that, you know, the fricassees and the stews and the beef daub, and, you know, there's a lot of similarities. You know, the great thing about the restaurants is they're all different and unique, and then it depending on your mood. I mean, each one has a certain fit. You know, like when I have people come to visit, they go, "Which restaurant should I go to?" I'm like, well, depends on what you're looking for. I mean, if it's someone who's never been to Louisiana and wants to get like kind of that more Southern Cajun vibe, obviously I'll say Cochon. You know, if they want to, you know, if they're into wine, obviously the wine list here is fantastic. I'll send them here. It just depends on who they are, and I mean, this sidewalk is one of my favorite spots in the city. I mean, I spent a lot of time, before I had an office, having our meetings out here. I mean, I wrote the menu for Butcher out here on this table. I'm pretty sure we wrote the menu for Cochon sitting out here on this sidewalk. See you guys.
Well,
yeah, it's just kind of like this really like nice European feel of a bistro, like the casualness of it, the bar, the tile floors. And I just really like the vibe. I've always liked it here. I mean, this is my first. So I'm always going to be biased towards it. It's where I spent the longest in the kitchen. So there's that bond I have to it. You know, all the things that I had set up over the years. You know, I personally set up, and the way things are done, the style of food. I mean, it's all very much. You know, not that Cochon and Peche aren't either, but you know, this one was I spent the most time, you know, slaving away in the kitchen in this one. A lot of the cooking I do is, you know, Rebecca will come over and we'll do testing, but at my house, because it's not, the restaurants are so busy, they're open all day and night, so it's hard to get back there, and the kitchens aren't that big, so it's hard to get back there and play when everyone's humping back there, and you know, I never wanted to be one of those chefs that walk in and be like getting in the way and like slowing everything down. Everyone has to tiptoe around you because you're the chef. You know, we have a lot. We talk about food and brainstorm and talk about menu items, but mostly, you know, my cooking was at events, charity, you know, testing days, and then, you know, I'll come in, I'll taste and look over everything and talk to the chefs. But no, I don't really work the line anymore. There's no typical day. It all depends. There's a lot of meetings, you know, and I remember having this conversation with Paul Kahn in Chicago. It's like meetings, you know, finance meeting, a labor meeting, a budget meeting, food meetings, service meetings, management meetings. So it's basically just checking in all day, you know, go to one place. Generally I like to start here because this is where the espresso machine is. I have an espresso. I'll sit down with Joe and Rebecca and talk about what's going on in the kitchen, and we'll look over some menu stuff. And then I'll go to the office, walk through Butcher, taste a few things there. And then Stephen and I meet a lot, and we'll talk about how things are going. And once a week, the whole executive management team gets together and we discuss how everybody's doing across the board. So we'll go through each restaurant one at a time, and we have an agenda. How's this manager doing? You know, what are we going to do about just, you know, how we're running the business? Are there any problems? So we'll talk about big picture stuff, like the bakery, for example. And we'll talk about, you know, what is the big picture for the bakery, and you know, and even down to the branding on the bags or the cups, what kind of food we're serving. What, you know, well, so like I'll say, let's try these dishes. Let's do some more lunch items. You know, I don't like I don't want to say this, but how can we make the specials at Butcher better? Let's come up with a list of 20. So we'll sit down and we'll come up with a bunch of dishes together, and we'll talk about which ones work and how they work on the line. Any kind of new ingredients, new sources. It's kind of all over the place, and you know, I'll come in when I can and walk through the restaurants, and I like going like Saturdays. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll start at 1 and spend 30 minutes to an hour at each one during service and just walk. I like that I can walk them. So stay here for a while, check in, watch the food, watch the service, go to the next one, do the same thing, and just kind of make my way through. There's a lot, you know, it's hard to touch everything every day. I do my best, but some days I can't. Like I said, I live at Boulangerie every Tuesday morning. My son and I go have breakfast there. And then, you know, I'll stop by and taste food, see what's going on. But it's on my way, you know, it's on my path. So everything's pretty convenient. I love New Orleans. I love this neighborhood uptown. So I just live in this little bubble here. So I don't get out much, to be honest. I pretty much stay in the bubble. When you go from the chef category to a restaurateur, I think really the restaurateur category is non-chefs. You know, people that open restaurants and hire other people to run them. Well, I'm not saying they don't run them or have something to do with it, obviously. I think this is like this new world of chef entrepreneur, chef business person, where, you know, me being a chef, you know, these days doesn't necessarily the definition's different. You know, you look at like Suzanne and Paul, and I can't speak for everybody, but the people I know that have multiple restaurants now, I mean, they spend, it's like, I'm going to see how I can relate this. It's like being in the kitchen, right? Every step of my career, you go from like line cook, tournant, sous chef, executive sous, chef, executive chef. I mean, there's all these levels that pull you farther and farther from, it's like if you're the chef of a restaurant, right, and you're working the grill station, you can't really see what's going on in the rest of the kitchen. So I had a dilemma and a hard time getting off a station as a chef to come around and the expo so they could see everything. And then when you start doing it, you realize, well, shit, I can see everything now. I mean, I can see that that salad's not good enough, and that's being cooked too hard, or that cook just dumped a whole pile of salt on that steak instead of, you know, spreading it out. So all of a sudden your vision opens up, and I find that even still now that as a chef, I feel like I'm a much more effective chef being at a, you know, seeing it from like the big picture view, where it's like, you know, these dishes as a whole need to be better, or let's go, like last year we went to Palermo, and let's go to Palermo and Spain and check out some food and bring some ideas back. And, you know, I'll take a core group of the people, the chefs and managers. We've done quite a few trips actually, you know, so that we get those ideas, and you come back with like, hey, this is a great dish, or, you know, the way that they cook this is fantastic. It's like, you know, the Peche model. When we went to Uruguay and San Sebastian, and we saw these great ideas, and then taking those ideas and putting them into practice in a restaurant setting. And that's like driving new food. And then mentoring is a big part of what I do. Is, you know, talking to, like, we have a, you know, new executive sous here at Herbsaint, and Stephen does a lot of that with the sous over at Cochon, where, you know, we're like talk to them about food, or like not just a dish, but in general. It's like, look, I don't want, you know, fish on top of something, because when you go to cut it, it smashes everything into the food. So that's why it needs to be separate, and you know, you got to think about how you eat this dish and what do you feel when you look at it, and just kind of like, you know, go over food with them, and have them put up a dish, and then you go back and say, you know, look, this is what I see on this dish that can probably be a little better. You know, let's be mindful of this, and what do you think? You know, what were some things that you would like? Why don't you write down some things, and let's go over it together and talk about how those flavors work together. You know, teaching them not to put too much shit on a plate, because that's a very big issue with young cooks and chefs, is that they tend to want to, I don't want to say show off, but like they're trying really hard, so they end up putting too much on a plate, or the dish gets confused. It loses its identity, if you will. So a lot of you know, my job as a chef is keeping track of those things, and keep the ideas moving, and keep the concept moving in a positive direction that, you know, is innovative, but at the same time respects what we do as a restaurant, so that we're not changing our concept or getting, you know, too far off the path. You know, doing food that doesn't fit, right? Doing, like, I don't know, Asian Mexican fusion, you know. I mean, you got to be careful with something like, you know, at Butcher, I'm like, okay, all right, we can do some Mexican stuff, that's fine. Like one of the line cooks there, this woman made these pupusas, and I had one. They just cook them for themselves. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. You got to put this on the menu, or at least run it as a special for a while. And, you know, it's just always open to new things. No matter where I go, where I travel, I always find something that I bring back. Even if it's the music that's playing in the restaurant, or the service style, or how they serve their water, how they plate, what the plates look like, what kind of plate is it, you know, what's the flavor profile, you know, where did they get that heat from? That's a different heat that I've, like in Seattle, I went to this place, Rebel, and it had this like corn, it was lamb done as corned beef, and it had like this simple vinaigrette, but it was super spicy, but not in a bad way, but just clean spice, and it was like so interesting. So seeing like food and bringing those ideas back, and taking people with me too, so that they can also experience these ideas and cooking styles. And I mean, I like where it's at. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there was a time where it wasn't. It was all kind of the same thing, and it was hard to get something different. I mean, shit, I remember before Company Burger opened thinking, somebody needs to open a fucking burger restaurant, for God's sakes, man. I mean, there's no good burgers in this town. You know, I'm on that kick right now with Chinese food. It's like, there's no good Chinese food in this town. And I'm dying to do it, trust me, but I think people would think I was crazy to open a Chinese restaurant. But man, the city needs it. I mean, I like Royal China a lot, but I don't think it's going to be there forever. And you know, a lot of these places, like Tony Angelo's closing, was a heartbreaker for me, because I love Tony Angelo's. I mean, that was to me a very important restaurant in New Orleans. You know, for that Sicilian connection, and you know, but I learned a lot eating at Tony Angelo's too. I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to go to Palermo for, was to find that New Orleans connection. And on the last day in Palermo, we found it. This one restaurant that had it was an eggplant involtini, and I ate it. I'm like, God, this is eggplant tina from Tony Angelo's. This is the same thing. This is amazing. This is like the red sauce, it was all there. I'm like, oh my God, I found it. I found the source. You know, obviously we don't have the seafood that they have in Sicily. You know, it's not a lot of squid here. But the style was there. I mean, it was very exciting to see it. But no, I think there's a lot of interesting new restaurants doing non-New Orleans food, which I think is great. I mean, God, there's only so much you can do with the same cuisine, but that doesn't mean that style can't be put into other cuisines, like Mofo, like Taco Loco. I mean, there's these restaurants that have that spice and that life and that vibrancy that New Orleans food has, but not necessarily doing, you know, Oysters Rockefeller or, you know, Pompano and Papio or the gumbo or a jambalaya, that you can have those kind of flavors. And I noticed too when I travel a lot that you don't find that in other cities. You can get really good food in other cities, but you don't have the punch, the vibrancy. I don't know what the balls, I mean, that New Orleans food has. I try to not say that on camera, but when we talk about it, that's how we judge other food. It's like, you know, it's like, this food doesn't have any balls. It's good, but it's missing something. What is it? Yeah, balls. That's just the best way I can put it. Well, I want to continue to run really great, top-notch restaurants. You know, I spend a lot of time making my employees' benefits package better, you know, sharing it and doing insurance and 401ks and setting up a company that's like a really good, you know, bones, because, you know, we started this thing like scrappy. You know, just this restaurant and 30 people. And, you know, everything we've done, we've had to learn along the way. When we've expanded, we had to learn how to run it. And then we get bigger, and we had to continue to figure it out and put people in positions that we didn't know what they really were. Like, we were just making up positions along the way. You're going to be, I don't know, operations manager. You're going to be dining room manager. Just so we just kind of figured it out along the way. But the best thing that I can say I've gotten out of this whole experience is the mentoring and giving people chances to grow and opportunities to succeed. You know, I'm really excited about Rebecca's nomination. I mean, I was honestly more excited about hers than mine, because I've worked with her for a long time, and I always knew she had it from the first day I saw her cook. I knew she was special, and the way she played, the way she tasted food, she had it. I mean, that's obvious. I knew it right away, first day. And so I spent a lot of time working with her and trying to coax that out of her and helping her find her way and her style. And I'm just thrilled to see that, you know, her on that list. I think she deserves it. So that to me is like a good measure for me. I mean, obviously success of the restaurants is a good measure, but seeing, you know, Stephen, Ryan, Rebecca, all the managers that work for me, all this growth that we've experienced, it's the people in it that really make it exciting for me.